What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening. I wanted to put this in the top of the show. Make sure you subscribe on Patreon, patreon.com/Brennan Tassif. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com to get your ex-drinking buddy merch. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. As always, we're coming to you live from Gotham Production Studios, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Grab me a beer and grab me a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do, hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but that's still one of my favorite things to do, hang out with a guest and reminisce about the good old days, the crazy days. Most weeks I will be joined by guests. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Miss Torey Cole!
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back.
Of course, making your return, your triumphant return.
A year later or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been. I'm like thinking about when it was, and I guess
it was in the old studio before they moved. Yeah, because they moved here in May of 21.
Now the entrance is all fancy.
Yeah.
I was like, who am I? And then they were like, no, go to the service elevator. And I was like, oh.
They had you go to the service
elevator. I had
a
moment of greatness of being like, this is swanky, and then being like, no, go to the back.
You go to the back.
Go through the service elevator.
As it always is.
Almost was amazing. And
go
then,
through the kitchen.
It's very, on brand for comics.
Plug everything up front. I know you do the podcast. I know you got a lot going on with stand-up. Plug everything. Let everybody know where they can find you.
So I got the Bonding podcast with Troy Bond. That's a good time. Tune into that. It's on Spotify, Apple. I'm going to Florida with Troy, actually. We're going to St. Petersburg. Doing a little show down there. February.
I know St. Petersburg.
4th and 5th. 3rd and 4th? Yeah, whatever.
Sometime in February.
In February. Find us. And then just follow me on Instagram, Torey Cole.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Well, you're a return guest. Last time you were on, we talked about peaking in high school.
Yes.
I was cool once. That was
told
my favorite.
my weed panic attack story.
Weed panic attack story. Mm-hmm. We did talk a lot about like you getting into drinking and stuff. And now you've maintained your sobriety, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I hit 9 months 2 days ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
9 months is the hardest trip to get.
Really? Mm-hmm. Why do they say that?
Because it's between 6 months and a year that everyone kind of, not everyone,
They're
I don't
like,
want to speak
we're
in that,
good,
but everything kind of starts falling back into place. People... It's the first 6 months that are very difficult, especially if you're getting fired or you've destroyed your life. You have to start rebuilding.
Right.
But addicts and alcoholics naturally, in my experience, are very good at rebuilding on the fly. We strive in chaos.
Mm-hmm. I love that. There's a name for that. The chaos theory? Whatever.
Something like that.
I love chaos.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
And so normally after about 6 months to a year, things kind of start falling back into place. And in my experience, I was always just like, all right, well, now I got to hit this with a hammer. This is boring. I don't want to do this anymore. And then people always go back out. And apparently that's not a unique to me thing because in countless circles I've been in with AA, people are like, yeah, 9 months is the hardest trip to get.
Interesting. Well, I feel like nothing is unique to you. General.
No,
anytime I think
right.
I'm like, oh, I feel this way. It's like everyone's like, yo, same.
Anytime
You're not special.
Anytime a joke bombs that's a little darker, I always have to be like, I have to remind myself, there's an audience for this. This is just not the audience for it. It's because at one point when I first came back into comedy in 18, I was just like, oh, I'm so dark and nobody gets me. And and then I realized oh, no, I'm not. It's the same thing you see in AA rooms and stuff where people think oh, I can't go to meetings because I'm the worst of the worst.
Totally.
And then you get in there and someone casually just mentions how they killed a family of 4 and you're like, okay, I'm not that bad.
Right. Totally.
I'm not
I
that
couldn't agree
guy.
more. I mean, that's I have all my blackout stories, but as I go down my sobriety path, I'm like, I don't really think I have a real problem, you know? So, but of course, to do it, to start being sober, I was like, I am such an alcoholic. It's crazy. I never addressed this. And I'm like, everyone's And like I have a joke where I talk about going sober. My friends being like, "Torey, you're not a real alcoholic."
I
like,
love that you brought this up.
I'm like, give me this one thing. Like, let me feel special. And now I'm like, no, bitch. You really like, yeah, you've blacked out maybe 30, 40 times, but sure, like. That's not that big of a deal. That's like the youth. That's like growing up.
Yeah,
that's called growing up.
I love that you brought this up because there's something, and it's kind of been a pet peeve of mine, especially when it comes to AA and stuff. Obviously, the program is what eventually I got sober using, and I tried a million other things, but it was the program that eventually worked for me when I did the work. But it's interesting because in rooms sometimes, especially in Florida, because Florida's a big rehab spot. So you'll have these people
Florida
where you like relapse and they're just like, come on, man. Like I've been sober 22 years and I only ever had to get one white chip. I go, yeah, but your bottom was like, you got like a DUI for speeding. Like,
yeah.
I almost died like several times. So in my head, it's just like, it's great that AA is so available to people, but sometimes people will come into AA that aren't out. But that's not the rule is you just have to have a desire to stop drinking. So that's the rule. So that's the rule.
Totally.
But there are some times where I'll meet people and I go that like, at
you
work.
Can't sit with us.
Yeah.
Unless
this
you
is
killed
the
a family
fucked
of
up
4.
table. Yeah. Good callback. But like people at work will come in and they'll be like, man, I need to start going to meetings with you. And I go, what happened? Like, tell me what's going on. And they go, yeah, I got hammered and apparently blacked out and texted my ex. And I go, that's not the same.
Yeah. No, I know. That's my joke, actually, because that's the reason why I stopped drinking. I
remember we talked about that.
Broke
Yeah,
the camel's back, but it was the reason I stopped. And I joke on stage. I'm like, it's like most alcoholics were like, yeah, I killed a family with my car, and I'm like, yeah, I just couldn't stop texting my ex. So again, I want to hit a year, which will be March 27th. Thank you. Are you gonna write that down? That's sweet. I've been really loud and annoying about it on social media. That's a big other it's holding me accountable thing. Like if I blast this on my Instagram, like I'm sober. Like when I look at alcohol, I'm like, you'll just let everyone down. Again, not that anyone really gives a fuck, but that's really helped me like sharing my story.
Yeah, I was gonna say this going through the breakup and everything recently. Like my family immediately called me because I am an alcoholic. And so my family was very concerned because they were
You're going to drink again?
Yeah. So my dad called, and I talked about this, I think with Max Fine, but my dad like called and he was in a panic and he's, what are you doing? Where are you? And I was like, I'm at home. Like I'm good. And the more I thought about it, because there was obviously as an alcoholic, there's a point where I'm like, yeah, maybe I will. Like who fucking cares? Like I have a good job. I make good money. I normally have like 3 or 4 days off in a row. But then the more, like that was my first thought, but then the more I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, but I moved here for comedy and I know what happens to my comedy when I start drinking because I've been there. And I get on stage and I run lights and I do shitty impressions and like I just like try to fight some people in the crowd. And I was like, that's not, I didn't move up here to be some whirlwind tornado, like to pay 5 times the money for rent
also,
just to destroy things.
It's your brand.
You
can't destroy the brand.
That was the other thing. From what you're talking about, like being held accountable by putting stuff out on social media and stuff. That's exactly, that was my very next thought was, first, I don't want to go back to that. But 2, my whole thing is sobriety.
Totally.
And I made it that way. I insulated myself in that cocoon, but now I can't come out of it, which is good because it makes it harder when I was younger, relapsing was so easy because like one little thing would go wrong. I'd be like, fuck it, I'm just going to drink.
How many times did you relapse?
A lot.
What was the longest you had gotten before going back? Like a year or
2 weeks away from my 1-year chip. So always be vigilant.
Damn.
Yeah. I was in rehab. I went to rehab, then I went to jail after rehab, and then I came out of jail, lived in the halfway house for like 9 months. This is when I was dating my ex-fiance, and everything was perfect. I moved out of the halfway house and got my own place. And I talk about this a lot in the one-man show, January 30th. But the owner of the halfway house came by our apartment, and he was just like, you guys still sober? And it had never, after going through all that, it had never crossed my mind that I could drink again. Because you know what I mean? It's like such a taboo thing in my head. And I was like, yeah, of course we are. Like, well, why would you even say that? But that planted the seed.
Your subconscious was like, oh, we can drink again.
Do this.
I see.
And then like a week later, I was sitting on the balcony with my roommate at the time, and we convinced each other that we had overreacted. We were only 20. I was 26. He was 25.
Yeah.
Being sober that young was stupid. And that was the furthest I got. After that, I couldn't get more than like 3 to 6 months together. And I was dating Alyssa at the time, and I tried to fix it by getting engaged. And she, you know, I've talked to you about this before, but she was my one and only someone. And I have a bit that I can finally put up now that I'm single again.
Where's Alyssa now?
She just got married in October. Yeah.
Are you sad about that?
No, I'm incredibly happy for her, actually, which shows a lot of growth. But
yeah, look at that.
The one thing that is bothersome, earmuffs, nobody tell her. I don't think she listens. But the one thing that is bothersome is the fact that, because we still communicate on occasion. We're not like texting all the time, but every once in a while she'll shoot me a text or I'll shoot her a text just to check in, see how everything's going. Because this is a person I was going to spend the rest of my life with.
How long had you dated for?
4 years.
That's a long time.
We dated for 3 years, and then we were engaged for like a year and a half, and then I couldn't stop drinking, so she left, which was smart. But she will text me sometimes like, oh, I'm going to get this for Blake. That's her husband. And it's like some Star Wars thing, and I'm a big Star Wars nerd. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking awesome. She goes, yeah, you guys are like so much alike in a lot of ways. And in my back of my head, I go, that motherfucker.
That's a weird thing to say.
But it's one of those things where, yeah, we would have, if I would have been able to stop drinking, we would have stayed together. Like,
is she pregnant?
I would assume, but I don't know.
Because like there's still time.
No, get out of here. I actually have a bit about being a toxic optimism or toxic optimist. Yeah,
that's funny.
Because it's like, yeah, I'm super optimistic about the future, and people are like, that's so good. It's like, yeah, my ex's husband could be a serial killer, and then she'll have to break up with him. So you're saying there's a chance?
I mean, I know the Kardashians are not an example of anything, but think of the lives they've lived. They've lived like 10. Like it was like the Reggie era, and then it was the
we all remember the Ray J era.
Yeah, whatever, Ray J. I'm blacking out right now. And then there was Kanye or whatever. There was so many, Lucas Humphreys or whatever. Then there was Kanye.
I love how you keep saying that, you keep throwing in the or whatever, like you don't actually know the time.
You're right. I don't know what's happening. I don't care about them at all. But then there was like the Pete. It's like there's just, and like she was like,
I forgot about Pete.
How could you forget about Pete? And so it's like, again, that wasn't really a long era for her, and it's not great, but it's like there's always going to be someone. I don't know. As someone who's single, I always look at that like whatever. Like it's like this now. Like, I use that saying all the time. It's like this now. And like my parents are divorced, so I have that mentality anyways, where it's like if it doesn't work out,
it doesn't work out.
It doesn't work out.
Well, that's what happened with Savannah and I. We'd been together for 4 years. We moved to New York together, and I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh my God, you guys were together for 4 years. Like that must be devastating." And this is actually not nearly as devastating as what happened with Alyssa, because like that one I saw coming, but never thought it would actually happen. Where it's like, if I don't stop drinking...
You were younger too.
Yeah. And
so you didn't have the perspective.
Yeah, because at the time it was like, if I don't stop drinking, she's going to leave. But I could not stop drinking. Like I couldn't. And I was like, she's going to leave. But in the back, something in the back of my head was like, she's been here for a lot. Like, she's,
you thought you could test the waters.
Bailed me out of jail. She's like done all these things. So it's like, if I'm just getting fucked up and like stumbling around the house, like what's the big deal? And then she eventually left and I was destroyed. And then with Savannah, it was weird because there were certain things about our relationship, being older and more mature and stuff now, where I was like, oh, I don't think this isn't gonna like stand the test of time. There were certain red flags that we both had that we kind of ignored because we were so hell bent on getting to New York and stuff. So then when we got here and things really didn't like magically fix themselves, I was just like, oh yeah, like this, I don't think this is gonna work. And she was like, yeah, I completely agree. And I was like, all right, cool.
I learned that during the pandemic. I went to Colorado and then I was in California and stuff, but I went.
Oh yeah, we did talk about that.
Yeah, I went through like my own little breakup or whatever, and I don't know why I keep saying or whatever. It wasn't whatever. I dated like a high school ex during the pandemic, very pandemic things. But anyway, so I dated him. We break up.
This episode is going to be whatever.
Or whatever. I like that. I go to Colorado and I get there and I'm like still bummed out about that stuff, and I'm like, oh, just because I'm in another state doesn't mean I'm going to be magically cured. And it's so funny because it's like, that, but it takes going through those experiences until you're like, oh, I still am me, and everything that I'm carrying is still with me.
Yeah, we see it in sobriety a lot. It's people call it a geographical cure. Like there's no such thing. Like you're not going to move. And if you are an addict or an alcoholic, you'll find whatever you want to find, no matter where they put you. I literally had no money and no car, and I was staying at a friend's house in the middle of nowhere in Daytona, and I still got booze every day. Like I walked to the liquor store, I begged, borrowed, and did everything I could to get booze. So it's like if you want to find it, you'll find it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when it comes to like our personal lives, like ourselves. I remember thinking like, all we have to do is get to New York and everything's going to be. And genuinely
it's
at the
like,
time,
no
I was
way,
like,
man.
yeah. And then we got here and I was like, oh yeah, how did I think some of these things would be fixed?
Then it would be worse in this city. The city will take your flaws and just expose you to them, and then poke you in like where it hurts.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I say all the time, you think you're anxious in like a smaller town in a
you're
suburb?
doomed here.
When you get to New York, you don't know anxiety until you have a girlfriend that doesn't really text a lot, and it's 5 a.m. on a Saturday, and you're
that's
like,
really scary.
Where's my girlfriend?
Yeah.
And she's like, I was out with my friends, like, leave me alone. And I'm like, oh, I thought you were like dead somewhere.
Yeah, which in this city, the amount of, like, when I first moved here, I'd black out and just wake up in my bed. Like, how?
Having no idea how you got there?
No Uber receipt, no.
This is the rosé, when you guys were doing
I had the rosé
that,
era. Yeah. Yeah, I hit it hard. But I'm like, I look back on that time, like, how the fuck am I alive? Like, I lived in the Lower East Side, like, very close to, like the East Side, not the safest place, like Pitt Street.
Yeah, like Alphabet City and stuff.
Yeah, like someone had been shot outside my door one Halloween. Like it was like, again, it's New York. You'll get shot anywhere, but or you could. I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but
you will eventually. You will.
You will. No, I don't put that.
Someone's carrying a bullet for you right now.
Universe, please, we're good. But like, I can't believe like. I'm very fortunate that all my blackouts ended with me alive in my, like, somewhere.
Yeah. Well, because excuse me, I don't know why my voice cracked just then.
I didn't even, you coughed it off. It was
we
good.
know comics that it didn't end that well for them. We know, I mean, we've had Espy on the show and stuff like that, and she's gone through what she's gone through, and she's openly talked about it, and, she's got bits about it and stuff, but it's like, oh yeah, it doesn't always end the way you want it to. You don't always end up at home in your bed, comfy. Like sometimes it can go very, very wrong.
Yeah.
And if you mix in being blackout drunk on top of that, like it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. What's funny, I'm back here because I have a blog. I guess I didn't plug my blog.
Oh yeah, plug your blog.
I've got ToreyCole.com. Yeah.
So you have ToreyCole.com.
Yeah,
that's you.
That is I.
Love it.
It is I. I just wanted a reason to write because I really want to write a book. That's like my dream. And I'm like, well,
got to put a couple
I'm
more
not
years
writing.
together of sobriety before you can do that.
What?
All the people who have books.
Oh, they're so
like it's like one of those things where it's like my crazy journey. I mean, I'm doing it with the one man show. It's all
totally. And I've read. Have you read The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober by Catherine Gray?
No, I haven't.
It's a cliche. It's a great book.
I read The
love
Luckiest
book.
Club, which was a good one.
It's like her crazy life. She was in the city, blacking out, being a wild animal, like working for like Vogue or some big magazine.
Fuck yeah.
She was doing great. She also writes about it like with such rose-colored glasses, where I'm like, yeah, I'm glad you did that too. Like, I'm glad I did it. Like, it's like you wouldn't be who you are without that. So it's like, don't demonize alcohol because you had a really good ass time.
Yeah. I tell people all the time when they go, like, I talk about romanticizing the past. And obviously, like, I talk about playing college football and stuff. When, like, if someone asks, I'm like, yeah, I was a Division I athlete. It's like, you were on the scout team and barely, like, hung on to your spot on the team. But if anybody asks, I was like, yeah, played football, college football, what's up? But I do the same thing with my drinking.
Yeah.
Like, and I've got bits about it like we all do, but it's one of those things where you're absolutely right. If it wasn't for me doing what I did, there's no, like, if things would have worked out, if I would have stayed sober and things would have worked out with Alyssa, there's no way I'm living in New York City right now talking to you on a podcast that has a few thousand listeners. Like, that would have never happened. And I'd be living every day with all this regret of, like, I could have done something.
You'd be a dad right now in Florida.
I would be, yeah.
You'd be a Florida dad. Boo. No, Troy and I actually talked about this on our podcast recently where we're like, every decision you've ever made led you to where you're sitting right now, which is a really cool thing to really break down and like sit with because you're like, wow, like every choice, like, when people say like, oh, I wish I could go back and like, I wish I would have, like on some podcasts, I know on The Honeydew with Ryan Sickler, who I'm a big fan of Ryan's, and on his podcast, he always, at the end, says, what advice would you give to your 16-year-old self? And I think about that all the time because your knee-jerk reaction is don't drink, stay away from drugs, like finish what you start. Right.
Like go to law school. Like all these things pop into my head, but then I go, no, I kind of like where I'm at right now, and I wouldn't have gotten here had I changed anything.
Drink the 99 bananas.
Yeah.
do it. Drink more.
it.
Also, when you're young, it's like they do romanticize the young alcoholic because it's like the
Doomed youth is very romantic.
Yeah, it is.
Doomed
and it's
middle
like,
age is sad.
It's so sad. It's so sad. So it's like I'm glad I like went through that, and it is kind of like you're like, oh, good for like I don't know. You grow up in a certain way. I will say though, I read this I've heard about this and I've read about this where it's like when you drink at a young age, you don't actually mature because you're
Arrested Development. We talk about it all the time in rehab.
It's fascinating when it's like you finally take a step back from alcohol. This is my first time doing this where I'm like, holy fuck, I never had to feel my feelings when I'm like going through something hard. I'm just like, I would drink and it's like, now for the first time, I'm like, okay, why do I feel sad? Let's break this down.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah. And you're like, damn it. Like, why am I have to like really sit with this right now? But it's been really cool. I actually learned like 3 years ago, I was dating this guy and we broke up and my solve at the time was I'm just going to get wasted.
Yeah.
I spent 2 months drunk. 2 months drunk.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir.
I know, it's crazy. I just look back and I'm like, holy moly. And I remember
Every day
like,
waking
up like 2 months later, fat and angry. And I'm like, wait a minute, that didn't help.
That didn't solve anything.
And that was one of the first times where it was like really in my face of like, hey man, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, this alcohol thing. And then I read Alan Carr's The Easy Way to Quit Drinking and Be a Happy Non-Drinker. And then it like explained my life to me. I was like, oh, it doesn't make it better? What? It only makes it worse. Thank you. And I think it takes experiencing that and then reading about it to be like, oh yeah. Because like you can read stuff that doesn't resonate and you're like, okay, let me go fuck it up and then I'll understand.
Well, maturity has a lot to do with it too, I think, in certain ways, because the Arrested Development thing is very real.
Yeah.
Like I still handle my emotion. I've been sober for almost 5 years and I still handle my emotions like a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
And I started drinking around like 18, 19 and I still handle myself like that because that's kind of where my brain is. And it's benefited me. Like there's no two ways about it. Like being overly emotional and overly empathetic and stuff like that has greatly benefited me, whether it's with work or with comedy. It gives me a different perspective on things than a lot of people. Because most 35-year-olds are just like, yeah, whatever, like it didn't work or doesn't work or I'll just move on. But in me, I'm like, no, like what happened?
Yeah.
And I overanalyze, which again has been good. But it's also crazy to think like when I was in my 20s, I just thought, like you said, like, oh, I'll just get blackout drunk and everything will be better. And for a few hours it is. Honestly, for a few hours it is better. Or else we wouldn't keep doing it. Your brain is
flooded with like a false flow of dopamine. You're like, oh.
That whole like sitting alone, just watching Netflix doing shots when I had the next day off from when I had the next day off from work.
So sad.
I literally was just like, oh, there's nothing better in this moment because I have nothing to worry about.
Your brain is being altered. So yeah, I'm sure it was fabulous.
So much fun.
It's funny. I was just with my family for the holidays in Florida, and my grandmother, I love her dearly, but she was just a bit rigid. Yeah, she was on one. And my family, my mom, my sister, and her husband, they were like, yeah, anyone want some wine? Like, I'm just going to take the edge off, And I'm like, I live
on that edge.
My little sober brain was like, what does that even mean, take the edge off? Like, like I was being a little like, I'm on my high horse with the sobriety stuff. And I was like, oh, they don't even know that like there's no such thing as taking the edge off. Like they're not making anything better. And I was like sitting there like, and then I was like, you know what? I'll just scroll on Instagram. That'll be my fucking
take your edge off
solve, which is so unhealthy as well. But I just was like, I'm going to go disassociate in the corner on Instagram while you guys drink your alcohol. So I'm like, I could definitely use a better tactic, but it was interesting just to hear them like that was their solve default, for like the issue in the room. And it's like, and again, I went and like looked at my phone, which again, it's like we have these like toys in our hand, like we're little kids,
super
constantly looking for like a way out.
And for validation.
Totally.
I posted something last night on the YouTube Shorts. Love the YouTube Shorts because they push the shit out of a lot of my stuff. Love it. That and the Facebook Reels. The Facebook Reels takes like a couple weeks.
Okay, you're like an old man with YouTube and Facebook.
Well, because Instagram doesn't like me. Because I spent 10 years establishing.
Have you been shadow banned?
I am on TikTok. Because I keep putting up that, like, I put up that underwear, that clip from the underwear show, and it got reported, obviously flagged, because I'm like naked. And then a lot of the clips I was putting up for the podcast got flagged because it's, people talking about robbing people or doing heroin or, getting drunk and crashing their car.
They don't like that.
So every time I would post, it would get flagged.
Yeah.
And, But I do find it fascinating because like I posted something last night and I tag it with all the tags and everything. And then I had a comment and I was like, oh, cool, a comment. So then I checked it. And after like 10 minutes, it's up to like 1,000 views. And I was like, I'm going viral. And so I just kept checking it and checking it. And it literally like shot up to 1,000 and then just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
But I just, that weird like, I got to get the validation.
It's very addicting. Whenever I video as well, I'm constantly looking because I always have that little red dot at the heart, and I'm like, "What's the little red dot? What is it gonna tell me?"
Yeah.
And then my last reel bombed, and now I'm like, "Fuck it."
Yeah.
Like I haven't posted a reel since, and I like archived it already. I'm just like, "Fuck this."
Oh wow, you just wiped it clean.
Yeah, I just remove. I'm like, this is too humbling, and eventually it would have like. It would have ticked up over time, you know? But I'm like, I don't want to sit with this. And I was like, whatever. Maybe the joke sucked. Whatever.
Well, that has been the good thing from social media that I've learned is with Hannah putting me on her TikToks and stuff, she has questions. And, you know, it's like, oh, the woman is going to ask the dumb male comics. But it's interesting because being raised by women and around women for the most part, I have jokes loaded for some of her questions because they're things that I've experienced.
Yeah, yeah.
So like she had a question where she's like, do you believe in astrology? And I have a whole fucking bit about astrology growing up with
folded
sisters.
Your jokes in.
Yeah, so and that's been the one benefit was sometimes I have bits where I go, maybe it's just not funny.
Yeah.
And then some of those same bits I've used with Hannah and they get like boom, 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 likes, you know, million views, a ton of likes. And I go, okay, it is funny. All right. I'm not
maybe
crazy.
In like a casual setting where it seems like an off-the-cuff answer, it probably.
Oh yeah, it blew up even more.
Yeah,
because people are like, "This guy's a J," and which is ultimately what we try to do is make things seem like they're
obviously. Yeah.
I want to get back because we mentioned your blog and then we completely derailed.
We did. So the reason I came back, I'm here today, is because I posted about the time I blacked out. Because I posted about being sober, which. I had like 40 people reach out to me saying, you know, this really helped me. This, because I talk about a trick that I've been using for my sobriety is I say, like, whenever I want to drink, I tell myself +5 -10, meaning that it'll be 5 times more fun in the moment and then and 10 times worse later.
1 step forward, 2 steps back.
Yeah. And it really helps me. And so people have been commenting like, oh, like I liked your like +5 -10 technique. I talked about.
That's your technique now.
I mean, I made it up.
No, but I'm saying that's your thing now. Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Just because for people listening, the environment we're in and what we do, and I say this at work all the time when people are like, oh, I've never heard of that. And I go, this is a swanky downtown Manhattan steakhouse. You've never heard of it because we're the ones who set the trends. Like we're the ones that everyone else copies. And it's on a much smaller scale, especially in my case. But I mean, obviously you're more popular than I am. But
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, you are. But it's one of those things where like you started doing that. And then eventually as your career gains momentum and gains steam, and if you stay sober, that could become a thing.
Yeah.
And then it'll be like, oh, you know, you're going to be leading a cult in 10 years and you're going to be like this.
+5 -10.
Yeah, you're going to be like the +5 -10 club.
If I ever go back to drinking, I'd be like, I'm going -10 tonight, boys. But so
people are going to get tattoos and stuff like that of that.
Oh, yeah, like Joe Rogan, just get my
10,
face on their face. That'd be fun. No, so I wrote about being sober. It did really well. And then I was like, I don't know if I want to be like I wrote about in the blog, like I said the 5 things that I've learned from being sober.
Okay.
And the last thing I said was I'm now a rigid bitch. Which I just want to call out because I feel a little bit like this, like I'm sober now, and it's like my identity was so wrapped up in like the party girl, like no fucks given, like wake up with chicken nuggets in your purse, and that to me was hilarious. And so
it is hilarious.
I mean, I literally have woken up with food in my bag, just loosely hanging out in there. But so now I'm like trying to find my new identity with it, and so I wrote that. It did well. I liked all of it. But then I was like, let me show the people, whoever is reading this, that I am still a human, that I was fun once. I know that was the name of the last podcast.
Yeah, I was cool once.
Yeah. So it was fun to write about a time when I blacked out, that I really loved that story. And I learned also, when I posted about sobriety, I posted a photo of me holding 4 wine glasses, absolutely wasted. And I think the visual drew people in. So then I had a photo of the pizza that I sent these guys.
Yeah.
From 2015.
Which is what sparked my interest because I saw the picture and you go, like one time I blacked out and I had to send, and I was just like, Where the fuck was this?
I know,
when we were
and I'll tell
talking?
it right now. I can give a quick, but I
No,
realized,
don't make it quick. We got plenty of time.
Okay, amazing. I realized that people like a fun visual that'll draw them in. So I was like, I love the story of the Sorry Pizza. I have this photo, so I will just share this. And it was fun to go down memory lane on this evening. But I'll tell the story of the Sorry Pizza. So I was in college, and it was my senior year, and I was out.
This is back in the South, right?
Colorado.
Yeah. Okay.
Pretty not South.
Why did I think you were in D.C. or Virginia?
I'm from Maryland.
That's why.
Yeah,
okay,
but I went to school in Colorado.
That's okay.
So.
Because I remember the story about the pyrotechnics on the river.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I remember thinking my friends were tweeting from Colorado saying the sky was lighting up. So I was like, oh, the whole world's going down. But anyways, so I'm in Colorado. I'm out with my friends. Me and my friend Zach are like, let's get out of here. Let's go to another party. And there was this lacrosse house that always had parties. Mm-hmm. So, and I had dated one of the guys.
I've seen the news.
You've seen the news. This is, you've already heard this, but you read it. So did you read the whole thing?
No, I just meant lacrosse players getting into trouble and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, dark times. There's a lot of that. But so I had dated this one guy. And
on the lax team?
Yes, he was younger. He was a sophomore. And so, yeah, it was like all of his friends that always had parties at this one house. So Zach and I go over there. We like bust through the door wasted. Like no one is home mentally
no one's,
for us.
Oh, I
for
think
us.
like no one was
we
at the
walk
house.
in and it's 4 guys just sitting playing video games. And they look over at us like, what the fuck are these people doing here? And we were like, hey guys. And they were like, didn't really even respond. And we just like go into the kitchen.
You just walked in.
Yeah.
And you had been in this house before because you partied there and you used to date the guy.
Yeah, exactly. So we just were like, there's a party here somewhere. And we like go into the kitchen. We're like hell bent on there being a party
There's
there.
a party here somewhere.
So we're in the kitchen. There's no one in there. We just start eating all of their food. We like go into the fridge. We're eating pizza. Like suddenly like we like get into like one of their protein powders and we're like pouring protein powders on pizza and just like throwing it like LeBron Jamesing it into the air. Like, and eventually one of the guys comes into the kitchen and he's like,
how long does it take before someone comes in to see what you guys are doing?
Like 5 minutes.
So you've done some damage.
We were
5
menaces.
minutes is a long time.
We were like, you know, like in Step Brothers when they're wandering around like putting pillows in the oven.
Yeah, when he's sleepwalking.
That was Zach and I, just animals. And literally, we're eating everything. Like the guys finally come in, they're like, "What the fuck are you guys doing in here?" Like I'm like, I got like pizza sauce smeared on my face. I'm just like, what? Like, I don't know. And they were like, you need to leave.
Oh, they kicked you out.
Yeah.
So
like,
no
you
party
need the
was
fuck out of here.
No party was found.
And I got aggressive. I like turned to one of the guys and I was like, you're a fucking loser.
Whoa.
Yeah. And they were just like, what? And so like Zach and I finally get removed.
That's a great visual though. Pizza sauce on your face.
Oh yeah.
Protein powder everywhere. And you're like, you're a fucking loser.
And this kid didn't drink, so I remember really, I felt that in my bones. I remember being like, you're a fucking loser.
Nerd,
yeah,
man.
It was bad. And then we go back over to our other friend's house and just pass out on the couch. And they took this as an opportunity to just like cover us in like tables, chairs. Like they thought it was like, instead of drawing on us, they were like, let's trap them into a fort.
We've done that before. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Because they wake up and they're like,
Literally, I woke up like under like a folding table. And I remember waking up being like, what just happened? Like I had no idea.
Do you remember when you woke up what your last recollection, like your last memory
There was like a blurry moment in the kitchen that I had, and I still have like a little blurry of like of the visuals of them like sitting, and then like me, I remember like being like, "You're a loser," like that kind of off flashed to me when I woke up, and I like looked at Zach and I was like, "What happened tonight?" And he was like, "I don't know." So then I like just like crawled my way out of the fort. No one was around. Like it was like 2 a.m. at this point, and I just wandered home, and I just was like, whatever. So I woke up the next day.
Didn't think a second thought about it.
Yeah, I was like, all right. So I wake up to like this like really angry text from the guy that I had dated before, being like, you will never talk to my friends like that. Like, I will never talk to you again. Like, you need to figure your life out. Like, I can't believe you would.
A sophomore is telling you this.
Yeah. And it's so aggressive. I'm like, oh my God, did I kill someone? I'm like, holy shit. So then I'm like, can you give me some context as to what happened? And he was like, He's like, all I can say is that like you are not allowed in that house anymore.
Because he wasn't there.
End scene. No. He just, I guess, heard from his friends. Yeah. So I was like,
they're like, hey, dude, your ex was here making a fucking ruckus.
Yeah. And so I just was like, oh, I gotta figure this one out. So I reached out to my friend Zach, and he's like, do you know what happened? And he's like, I'll figure it out, because he was on the lacrosse team. So
okay.
So he was like,
so you didn't just go into a random, like he knew those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So then so Zach finally tells me, he gets the story from the guys, which is why I know all of that happened.
I assume so.
So he gives me the rundown, and I'm just like, fuck. So I'm like, how do I apologize? And I was like, I got to do something, I got to save my ass. So there's this pizza spot in Boulder called Cosmos. It's so good. It is.
Shout out to Cosmos.
Cosmos Pizza. It is the best. And so I was like, I called Cosmos, and I was like, I really need your help.
Big favor.
Big favor. I need to order this pizza. It needs to go here. And I know this is kind of crazy, but can the pepperonis please just say sorry? And they were like, what? And I was like, the pizza needs to say sorry. And he's like, yeah, sure. Okay. So
it's not, they could do that.
So they did that. And then I had gotten in contact with one of the guys that lived there that was like the only like one that was like would speak to me still. Mm-hmm. And
the one that knew, like, there's always that one friend who's like, yeah, it happens.
Exactly. Yeah. And so he was home, and I was like, did it make it? And he was like, yeah. And he sent me that photo, and I was like,
him sending you the photo. This
makes it all worth it, because I didn't ask for the photo. I wouldn't have even dared to, like, I was like, I'm out. You did. But him sending me that pizza, I was like, this is gold. Yeah. And I was like, thank you. And like, I even Instagrammed it being like, picking up the pizza. I wrote, the caption was, picking up the pieces one piece at a time. So yeah, that's, the whole story.
But that's
the story of the sorry pizza.
The sorry pizza. It's interesting, and it's also hilarious. The whole, like, not even, like, causing that much chaos and not even remembering it.
Yeah.
Because that's happened to me countless times.
Yeah.
Where I have I'm 34 now, and I still have flashes to when I was like 17 and 18. I started drinking like at 17 a little bit, and then by 18, 19, and then 20, 21, when I stopped playing football, I was insane. So in like 4 years, I went from like...
You didn't drink in high school?
No, and I was a nerd in high school. Like, I was bullied a lot. Like, that's where all this stuff comes from, all the scars and everything. I didn't know how to like deal with my emotions, and I used to get so sad and anxious that I would just hurt myself to like take my mind off of the way I was feeling. And I didn't have a lot of friends, which is why I love doing comedy now, because I love being around and I love the hang, but I'm also completely content with just being by myself. Like, I can do both. And my sisters and brother were incredibly popular, so they partied and stuff in high school. But it was after high school where I have these very vivid memories of like going to Razzles in Daytona at like 18 and being blackout drunk, but like running into my high school girlfriend there. And this is obviously like a year after I graduated, and she was, this was years later. So she's like a junior or a senior. And this is like one summer when I'm back from college. And like, that still like is in my head. I don't remember going to the club. I remember seeing her in the VIP. Somehow I got in there. And that was like, and then like hours later, I stole a car from my friend. Like, those are the two things I remember from like a 12-hour block of time.
Yeah.
And it's insane how
really
your
crazy.
brain is just like, no, we're going to just shut it down. Shut it down.
Shut it down. Yeah, I spent one New Year's, I went to College Park, Maryland. I remember driving there being like, oh, I don't like College Park, Maryland. This is definitely sketchy. We got these like weird tickets that got you into like 5 different bars in the area. So our plan was just like bop around. And I remember being like, I was drinking like the ciders just to like take the edge off on my way there, and because I was like nervous.
You didn't even do it on purpose, and you called it back.
And I was like, whatever, like it'll be fine. It's not that dangerous. It's like one of the most dangerous places ever, Baltimore. So I was like, I remember getting
more careful
to the house we were like gonna pregame at, already wasted.
You drove there?
My friends did.
Okay.
I was drinking in the car, but they were driving. And so I get there and I'm like super buzzed, which is a great way to start a pregame, which is a great way to start going to bars. And I hadn't eaten dinner. It's a classic mix. It's like,
that's a big alcoholic thing too, though, is don't eat because it's going to take longer for you to get fucked up. At least in my experience, I purposely would not eat all day. So in that way, instead of doing 10 shots, I only had to do like 3 shots to like get going.
Yeah. And I was underage too. Yeah, I actually remember. I remember walking into one of the last bars. Again, I walked into the first bar blacked out.
I was gonna say, what happened between? So you get to the pregame, you're already kind of fucked up, and then you just keep drinking, and then you just go out into the world.
I'm blacked out by the first bar.
Okay.
Completely blacked out to the point where I'm walking up to the bouncers, holding my credit card and looking like 3 different directions. They're like, I'm holding up my credit card. My friends were like, Tori, you literally walked up to a bouncer, your eyes were crossed, and you were like giving him your credit card as your ID, like holding it up.
Yeah.
And then I remember waking up and
the name on the credit card is your name, but the name on the ID is not your name.
Oh yeah, it was a fake ID too. I'm pretty sure I grabbed my real ID after that, and they were like, "This says you're like 18," and I was like, "Can I get in?" And they're like, "We don't give a shit."
It's College Park. We got other shit going on.
Yeah, and I woke up like the next morning, and it was like I wish I told everyone, I was like, I wish someone just put me in a closet, in a black dark closet, because I wouldn't know the difference. Mm-hmm. My memory is the exact same, and and I would do this weird thing when I blacked out where I'd bite people, and that sounds insane, but I would just like bite people's like shoulders, like at a bar. Like I would just they'd be like, last night you bit me. Like people had like black.
Oh, you would like bite,
yeah,
like not playful flirty.
No, like
bite,
people had like black. Like
blue,
teeth marks, and they were like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And like I was like, like I had like 4 people text me the next day that I hadn't seen in years, being like, "Hey, last night you bit me." I'm like,
that's the biting thing is interesting,
weird, and I did it a lot. Like it started in high school.
Like, that's what you were known
One
for?
of the first times I blacked out, I bit my friend on the shoulder, and he was like, "Last night you bit me," and I was like,
well, and I thought when you first said it, I thought you meant like in a flirty,
no,
just
like
loosey goosey, here we go.
No,
but
and
you
like
were
a weird, like I would
legit,
walk
like,
around bars and just like bite people. So weird. And I was like, I Googled it too. I was like, is this a thing?
Is it?
Well, I've seen there's like been memes where it's like a cake that says, "Sorry, I bit you last night" or something, and I'm like, is that I Googled it after that. I was like, maybe it is a thing, and I don't really think it is, but for some reason I felt the need to just like.
Well, Tropic Thunder even did a bit about it.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna assume
Like,
it's a thing. It's
towards
a thing.
the end of the movie, Jack Black, when he's coming off of heroin, he's like, I want to put my teeth in his hide.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
then
like,
there's
it's
a
a thing,
thing.
yeah.
Okay, it makes me feel a little less weird, but yeah, that was the time where I was like,
Well, it's like we talk, bringing it all the way back to the beginning. Like, we're not as unique as we think. Like,
exactly.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you do
You're
it,
not
other
spe-
people
if-
do it.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's so funny because I always stop myself from posting like niche things, but then I'm like, if this resonates with at least 5 people, that like this niche, like that would be funny. It'd be a fun way to connect. And whenever I see someone posting something, then I'm like, I do that. And I'm like, why didn't I share that? I do that. Like, it's
Do you ever watch specials or like just see other comics and they'll do a bit about something that you've been like?
Yeah, all the time. And I'm like, why the fuck
Dusty
didn't I
Slay
say
had
that?
a bit about a DUI and it was so succinct. It was on his Netflix, the stand-ups. It was so succinct and so funny and just so to the point, but encapsulated everything I've ever tried to do on stage about getting a DUI. And I was like, fuck.
Yeah, totally. That's hilarious.
I was like, there it is. It's over.
Yeah.
I got to scrap all that material now. It's there. Dusty did it. It's over. Thanks for coming out.
Right? No, I feel that way when people talk about weight. Like Jared Freed does such a nice job talking about struggles with weight.
Yeah.
And last night I was watching him perform and talk about being like, I'm always going to be like, I came out of the womb like wanting to lose 10 pounds. Like he'd be like, he woke up he was born on a Thursday. On Friday, he was like, diet starts Monday. Like, and I'm like, what a brilliant joke. And then I'm watching the audience and I'm looking at everyone in the room laughing. And everyone's laughing. Like skinny people, like men, women, like all ages. Yeah. And I'm just like, this resonates with everybody.
Yeah.
What talking about weight and insecurities is everyone, it will relate. And it's like, and you have to do it well. Cause like anyone can be like, I feel fat, don't you? And it's like, okay. Like, don't you?
What's
like,
the deal with feeling fat?
Yeah, like right now I've been like telling the audience like clap it up if you feel like holiday fatness, and like I get the whole room to clap it. I'm like, we're in it together, and like that's not funny at all, but it does bring like a togetherness to the room.
Yeah.
And then I'll go into some jokes about feeling overweight, but I'm like, how do I really encapsulate like the amount of brain space I think about like my body and like the struggles and like just feeling gross and like going to the gym being like, what am I even doing here? Like just looking at everyone like picking shit up and putting it down. I'm like, what are we doing?
It's so funny you say that. I literally when Savannah and I first broke up, out of habit, I still go to the gym 6 days a week. And I literally was at the gym and I thought, what the fuck am I doing here? Like, I'm still chubby. I still have a belly. Like, my girlfriend and I broke up. Like, what am I even doing? And
Totally.
I went to a mic because I was like, oh, that's genius.
Yeah, profound.
And I did it. And then, like, nobody laughed. But it's like you're saying, it's like,
what are we doing?
And I'm not, obviously, I had that thought and I tried to turn it into a bit. And then you have the same thought where you're like, what are we doing?
Sometimes I'm at the gym and I'm on the treadmill and I'm just like, if I step outside and I get hit by a taxi, this is the last hour I spent of my fucking life. And then I'm like, well, then I'd rather be eating cake.
Hilarious.
And then I'm like, but then I'd be sad if I'm fat. So you go down this whole rabbit hole of like, how much time am I spending in the gym? What is that taking away from my life? And I'm like, well, what is it giving to my life? And I'm doing all this like fucking mental math and I'm at the gym and just like, why? Like, I'm like, I can't even be present in this moment because it just feels like I'm like wasting my life. But it's like, you need this to go live your best life.
That's the weird thing about it is because I do work out 6 days a week, but I still do have this belly and stuff. And I'm certified personal trainer. Like, I've taken all the courses. Yeah. Obviously, in college, we had dietitians and nutritionists and stuff. So I know, and I joke all the time with my friend. I go, yeah, I could be shredded if I wanted to. Mm. Do you know how much work goes into that? Like, that's why I talk about this.
Do you ever get close to? Because like sometimes like I'll get like close to feeling good and then I'm like, I feel good, and then I just burn it down. And then the cycle continues. And I'm like, what is this fucked up hamster wheel that I'm on?
Had someone at work the other day, like 2 days ago, be like, damn man, you're getting a little thinner. And I go, yeah, I've cut out a lot of sugar.
You went and got a pizza.
I was like, I've cut out a lot of sugar because with the one-man show coming up, I understand. Like, I'm a giant compared to a lot of like other comics. And I know that because when I have guests on, I'm like, God, I'm like twice their size. And that's always been like a point, like, yeah, I'm a big guy. But when you're on stage, like I had a spot at the Cellar a couple months ago and I filmed it. And there's at one point where I turn and like just turn, but my belly's like hanging over my belt just in the angle. And I was like, I cannot have that for the one-man show. So he literally goes, man, you're looking svelte. Like, I said, yeah. I've cut out sugar for like a week, and I have a huge sweet tooth. So a week without sugar for me is a lot.
That's how I feel. I have a huge sweet tooth.
Yeah, and
you're not drinking, so you're like, I'm gonna have the cake. I'm not drinking.
Fuck yeah.
And then your body's like, no, fuck you.
The next day, which was yesterday, there was someone I met on the apps, and they were like, we were texting because now we have each other's number, and we were just texting. And she was like, oh, I'm really hungry. I'm thinking about going to get dinner. And I immediately, because I'm a pretty spontaneous guy, was like, I'm starving. Let's just go get dinner. And we went to a steakhouse and I just ate so much.
Like an animal?
Like a fucking disgusting pig.
Yeah.
Ordered like 4 appetizers.
And you're like, he said I look good.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly what I was like. I'm looking good. I'm feeling good.
I got some room to move. Yeah, totally.
And I left there and I was like sick.
Yeah.
Because we got like 2 big steaks, 4 appetizers. It's the place that I work, so I don't want to mention it. Because,
fair. Yeah. That's a smart move though, to go take her to because did you get a big discount?
Yeah, yeah. And it's the best. I think it's one of the best steakhouses in the city. So like, it's like a win-win. Yeah. It's like I get my discount and you get to have great steak. Totally. Like, and it's swanky. So it's like, what's up?
That's fun.
But I just ate way too much. And then I felt sick. And then this morning at the gym, I was like, what? For
why?
What?
For what? Totally. When I overeat, I'm like, well, I'm not going to go work out. Yeah. And then it's like, what kind of attitude is that? I'm an all or nothing. It's funny.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we're on this show.
It's funny. I read once, and I'm trying to make this into a joke. I read once that addictive personalities aren't a thing.
Oh, no, they're totally a thing.
Well, it's like apparently there's signs where it's like, it's not a thing. And I'm like, well, it's like, okay, here's how the joke.
I've got an arrest record that begs to differ with that.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to Google it again because I remember Googling and being like, and it was like, yeah, it's not really a thing. And
so hit me. What's the bit?
Here's the bit. I'm sorry to do this to you.
No, you're good.
But I think it could be funny. I haven't really tested it either. So I talk about, I'm like, oh, my friend was telling me like addictive personalities aren't actually a thing. And I'm like, that makes no sense. Like, why is it that if I have chocolate, I have to have like 10 pieces and not just one? And they're like, well, that's just called being a fat ass. So there's that. Thank you for laughing.
Well, and you could also go into obsessing about it
Yeah,
not being a thing.
that
You
would
could
really
also-
flow in.
You could pivot into.
Being
So I went
addictive
home
over
and I had
it.
to research it, obviously.
Yeah.
So I checked Google, and then Google told me this. So I went to WebMD.
That's
and then
hilarious.
yeah, just go into.
Oh, genius. Okay, well, at least it's being recorded. I'm like, I'll have to remember this. Okay, that's actually very good. When is this going to come out, though?
2 weeks.
Okay, I'll have to write it down after this. But that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Again, I need to Google it because I heard that and I did some research and I'm like, this has got to be a thing. Because it's like, why else are people...
Well, so I understand, I think, where the logic lies, which is alcoholism is a thing. Drug
Right.
addiction is a thing. Those are recognized by the American Medical Association as actual diseases, just like cancer, just like diabetes. Those are things.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what they're saying is you fall into a category of, like, you can be a drug addict, but that doesn't mean everything in your life you're going to be addicted to, which I get that logic because I've snorted heroin, I've smoked crack, but I went to rehab for booze. I cannot stop doing. So I guess I understand what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And like when I start playing a video game, I get like sucked in and I obsess about it and I think about it. But then if I just go a day without playing it, like it kind of just dissipates.
Totally.
It just goes away.
Yeah.
The gym is one of the only things. The gym and comedy, obviously, are the only two things where if I don't do them for an extended period of time, and I'm talking like 48 hours, I start to get stir crazy.
Wow.
And like it sucks because I'm not my 2023 resolution is to like, I need to start reaching out to get on more shows and stuff because this open mic thing, hoping someone's going to ask me to be on their show, is for the fucking birds. You know what, and you know.
Mics are not a place to... Actually... I have heard people getting booked from mics. Yes.
I do like doing the mics and stuff, but I've gotten more bookings from doing the podcast than anything else.
Yeah.
And I've had people reach out and be like, "Oh, here's the list of all the produced shows. Here's the people who produce them. Just ask." And just there's thousands of them in New York, and I've had that list for months, and I'm just like, "Oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it later."
It's hard to ask.
I know because we feel like we're good.
Yeah.
So it's like I know I'm not the best, and I've told this story before, but there was one time at the stand, I was downstairs talking to Shane about football, Gillis, and I was like, oh, look at us. We're like two guys just talking football. I was like, we could be the same person. Like, we both do comedy, we're both talking sport. And then he went up and just murdered. And I go, we're not the same person.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand there are different levels, but I feel like I'm definitely in a spot where if someone put me on, like, especially like a producer at a bar, like, it's I've done this a million times.
Totally.
So it is because in my head, I'm like, yeah, but if you ask, it's like they're doing you a favor.
Right.
And I'm like... I
had someone reach out to do my show once, and then I said, oh, I'd like to do your show as well. And they're like, okay, yeah. But I remember going into their show being like, I don't even feel like I like got this.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling at all. Like I was like, I never want to ask for this again because I just felt very like...
You feel like they're doing you a
here
favor.
You go. Yeah. You're like, I don't want to feel like I owe you anything. And because I don't know. It's such a game of tit for tat. And it's like, once you just remove that, it's like, fuck it. Like,
well, that's why, yeah. And it's hopefully, I've got the other podcast coming out with Daniel Torado and Matt Fulcheron. And I know that one's going to be bigger because they know huge comics that they're going to go on their shows and promote it. So I was like, okay, maybe when all these chips kind of fall, we'll figure it out. Because that is the one thing. We were talking about Derek earlier, and I love Derek and Gio, and they've been on the show, and they're friends of the show. But I remember I asked them to be on 23-1, and this was months after they had both done my show, and it was a few months later. And in my head, I was like, why haven't they? Like, I've been to jail so many times. Like, like I know, like people look at me now, and I'm sober, and they're like, oh, you're just like another cis white straight guy. But it's like I've lived a life. Like, why? And they like, I was like, why haven't they asked me to do 23-1? And then I go, oh, because you have 900 followers, you dumb idiot. Like, you're not moving things in New York. So finally, I reached out to them and asked them, and they're like, yeah, of course. But it was still that nagging feeling of like, oh, you didn't earn this. You basically begged them to be on it. Yeah.
How was it?
It was okay. Which is the worst kind of set you can have as a comic.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't kill, didn't bomb, just okay. But it was the first time, this was about a year ago now, it was the first time I had done a big club that I really looked up to in New York. It was the first time I'd ever been on one of those stages.
Yeah.
So I
love the stand.
I was super nervous.
It's so fun.
Yeah. And now I've done it a couple
downstairs?
times. No, it was upstairs.
Okay.
And now I've done it a couple of times. Like different people have put me on their shows and stuff. So now I'm way more comfortable.
Totally.
But that was the first one where I was like, I have to kill it.
Yeah.
Because, Joe the manager's here and Adele's here. Like, I have to fucking murder.
Yeah.
And I went up with that, like, just talking at the crowd, not talking to the crowd.
Totally.
And it was like, it was okay.
Yeah. Also, once you learn, like, no one's actually watching or gives an actual fuck. So
There's so many
fun.
times where I have comics who I consider very close friends, and I will say something in conversation. I'll joke quote myself, and they'll be like, dude, that's so funny. You should talk about that on stage. And I go, I've known you for years. And you obviously have never seen my set because I talk about that on stage all the time.
No one's really watching.
Nobody cares.
Yeah. I mean, I manage Greenwich every Tuesday, and like I have so many comic friends that I'm like, I'll pop in and I'll watch, but like you're so inundated by comedy that you're just like, okay, like I love Julio. I think he's brilliant, and I've seen him a million times.
We just talked about him last week with JC Mendoza.
Oh, really? Yeah. So one time I sat through his whole set, and I've sat through many of his sets, the whole thing. But for some reason, like I had never heard, like I hear like him go, ah. Have you ever heard him do that?
No.
Okay, so he has a whole bit about being called an eagle, or like the song about the eagle, and he does that noise. And I remember hearing the noise consistently just from like the back.
You've heard the noise 100 times.
I've heard the noise 100 times, and I never knew what the noise was for. And then finally, I sat through, and he did that bit, and I was like, oh, this is so brilliant. But like. And I couldn't say anything to him because obviously I've heard him do the squeal from the Office a million times.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I've been around for this joke, but I had never sat through that part of it. But it was so funny. I was like, oh, that's the noise.
Yeah.
So
it's weird too because I don't know if it's unique to a few people in New York, but I'm so obsessed with comedy that like I do even at Mike's. Excuse me. I'll be like on my phone, but I'm listening.
Yeah.
And if something hits me, I'll start laughing. And it's weird how many people, like I'll go to Mike's and I'll purposely like do bits for like if O'Toole's hosting. I'll be like, oh, this is funny. Like Ryan's going to think this is hilarious. And I'll do it. And he'll just give out, like he'll be doing something on his phone and just be like, huh? And then I'll go back to do it. And I go, oh man, like I thought like I was going to crush the room with this.
Totally.
But it's like you said, nobody fucking cares.
No one gives a shit, which is great.
Speaking of no one giving a shit.
Yeah.
We've got like 5-10 minutes left.
Okay.
I wanted to talk to you about dating sober, the apps.
Yes.
So this is something I've only been on the apps for a couple weeks now. But it's weird being sober on the apps because the natural go-to is, hey, do you want to grab a drink?
Yeah.
And it's a social lubricant. There's a reason why Prohibition only lasted 9 years because people like to fucking drink. So how has your experience been with divulging the sober thing and like talking about that and like doing all that? So you told me you deleted the apps, but
I deleted the apps.
I've been sober for 9 months, so I'm sure you had them at some point.
I had them at well, I do this thing where like I'll go like 2 years without them, get kind of bored, be like, man, they weren't that bad. Download it for a month, be like completely like this is so sad, and then delete them. Okay. So that's my cycle. Yeah. So I had the apps like 2 months ago for about a month, and I was like, what am I doing? I didn't do anything. I didn't talk to anyone. It was a waste of my time.
So what is your biggest beef with the apps?
It feels very easy come, easy go.
Yeah. Okay.
No one really it feels like you're like talking to robots. I've also with comedy, it's like I don't care about social norms anymore. Like I will just stomp through the landmine of them and make it weird and say crazy shit. And it's like, oh, these people are regular human beings.
They're
like,
normal people.
You can't say things like
I'm such an open book. People are like, oh, why don't you drink? And I was like, oh, well, when I was 30, I almost died. I ended up in the hospital. I have 2 DUIs, 8 arrests. And they're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Bit of an overshare.
So like I would like, I don't know. It's like, and I might get bored. And it's like, I don't want to date a comic, but I don't want to date someone that's not following their dream and like pushing the limit on something that's not like the most sustainable thing. Like, it's like I want to be in like the creative realm, and I just felt very like it's like a lot of finance dudes. And I know there's other great guys on the apps, but swiping through,
I'm one of those great ones.
I was constantly like uninspired and a little bit sad for myself. Like if I had a bird's eye view on me sitting home alone on a Friday night on the apps, I'd be like, you're a fucking loser. Like
you'd be the fucking guy.
So I didn't like it. I didn't like the feeling it gave me. And I do want to meet someone organically. And a no shade on anyone that's met someone on an app. Like my sister met her husband on an app and he's incredible. And they're very happily married.
Yeah, I saw the pictures from the wedding. Yeah. You officiated.
I did officiate. It was great. Thank you. So yeah, it's just not for me.
Well, I think because my biggest thing, I have 2 things with the app. One, they make you pay to see your matches.
It's embarrassing you're paying for an app.
Well, and they purposely like bury your matches.
Yeah, they're like, you have to pay for this. You're like, if you're going to be on this app, you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fine. But I'm like, it's so humbling to be like, I'm paying money. And then I'm like, how much do I really care? Like part of me, I have like the devil on my shoulder, like, you're just doing this for material. Yeah. And then the angel's no, you really do want to find love. And I'm like, no, fuck you. Shut up. That's embarrassing. So
I mean, I met some cool people on the apps, but it's also one of those things too where it's frustrating because, like you're saying, like being a creative and having a weird schedule, because I work at the restaurant and then I also do comedy and I do the podcast, so my schedule is completely fucked. So like I meet people who have like 9 to 5s and they're like, hey, do you want to get together on like Saturday at 6? And I'm like, absolutely not. I have to work. And they're like, well, what about Wednesday, like at 4:30, 5 o'clock for dinner? And I'm like, no, like I'm
at a mic.
Gonna be, like I'm gonna be at a mic. Yeah. So it is difficult, but my biggest thing is just the weirdness of, and I know there's probably a million comics doing bits about this, but I've just got on the app, so forgive me. But the weirdness of talking to someone back and forth and then setting it like a date, like you burn a lot of the, like how we would say in comedy, like you burn your material by putting it up online. You burn a lot of the conversation by texting back and forth for 2 weeks before you hang out.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely never did that.
Well, I've done that a couple times now where it's like someone, and you're talking on the app and then it's going well. So they're like, oh, this is my number. And then you start texting back and forth.
The trick is just to go out with them.
Yeah, because that's what's happening to me.
Not that I know anything, but that's what I hear.
Yeah, because it's been like a week with some of the people I'm talking to. It's been like a week or 10 days. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. But then I'm like, hey, let's hang out. And then they're like, okay, next Thursday. And I go, that's another like 5 days of us just talking, which is great. But then you go to hang out and it's like,
womp, womp, womp.
I know where you're from. I know what you do. I know you hate your job. I know you have no creativity whatsoever. Like, I know all this about you.
It's a waste of time.
Yeah.
Also, you just got out of a relationship. Maybe you should just be with yourself.
No, shut up.
Sorry, I really believe in being with yourself.
That's only because you've been single for so long.
It's a good time. Me, myself, and I. We're fun.
No, I actually completely agree with you. I think I might have to delete the apps because...
You should definitely be single for a while.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I have no intention of getting in a relationship.
Yeah.
So part of me feels bad because some of these people are looking for actual relationships, and I'm like, oh, I have no intention.
You're emotionally like unavailable right now.
Yeah,
you're probably processing a lot. 4 years is a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. No, I appreciate you coming back on. This was fun.
It is always a good time. Thanks for having me.
Plug everything one more time. Let everyone know where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at Torey Cole. I don't do TikTok, but I'm trying. So at Torey Cole again _ because some little kid took my fucking handle.
I was gonna say that's why when you had the ToreyCole.com, I was like, good for you.
Thank you. No one really has my name except for that one girl. Yeah, ToreyCole.com. I do a weekly blog post on Sundays. Every Sunday. I'm holding myself accountable to that. And then the Bonding Pod. Follow me on
Troy.
Yeah.
Troy Bond. Troy's blowing up.
Troy Bond. He's blowing up. Yep. Follow me.
I saw that exchange that he had a couple of weeks ago with the heckler.
Oh yeah.
That was.
Yeah, I made her cry. It was hilarious. Yeah.
Thank you everybody so much for listening. At Brendan T Comedy on all social media. BrendanTComedy.com. One man show. Also titled Ex Drinking Buddy. That'll be January 30th at Producers Club, 6:30, 8:30 shows. Live taping, so please don't be late. Don't come strolling in. It's a small theater. If you come strolling in late, everyone's going to see you. And I'm going to leave it in the cut so that way
roast them.
Forever,
make them cry like Troy did.
I don't know if I'll do that. Troy's good, though.
He's great.
Yeah. We'll talk to y'all next week.
Yeah. Bye.
Perfect. That was fun.
That was fun. Sorry, my drinking stories were fairly tame, I'm realizing, but...
No, they're not. There's a story where someone says they black out. We think they're tame because we've done it so many times, but it's actually incredibly like a scary thing.
That's true. You couldn't pay me to black out now.
I mean, I fall asleep on
you
the
could not
couch
pay
watching TV and I panic. Like, I wake up in a panic. Like, what happened? What did I miss? Like, I can't imagine living my life like that. And I did for a very long time. There are some times where I'd be playing like video games, drunk as shit, and I'd wake up and I'm like, why am I 4 levels higher?
Okay.
Yeah, so...
What are you doing the rest of today?
You know it, Mike's, baby.
Mike's? What Mike's are you hitting?
I'm gonna go get lunch, and then I'm gonna go down to a comedy shop at 4.
Okay.
And then Pear at 4:30.
Where? Oh, the Pear?
Yeah.
Nice.
What is that from? You said earlier, but I didn't hear you.
That's just the background at the Fat Black. Or the... Okay. Yeah. The Fat Black Lounge.
You've done this all, right? One of the rooms?
Yeah, I mean, I would hop on to like Rick Crom's like Comedy Cellar showcases for the class. So nothing.
Oh, but you've never done the room like for a show?
Yeah, I have, but it's just like it's the showcase.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like a house show.
Ryan.
That'll be a while for that, but
Ryan
one
Reese,
day.
Well, Ryan Reese comes into my restaurant.
Oh, really?
Strip house, yeah. So
he throws you on his like Monday show?
Yeah, he's thrown me on it
Nice.
before. And then Liz is a regular.
Liz?
The GM of the cellar is a regular at the strip house. And I hook her up like a fucking tow truck when she comes in. She doesn't pay for anything except like the steak.
No way.
Yeah.
And then she gives you spots?
No, I wish. But that's what we're building towards.
Wait, Liz?
Liz, short, curly hair, a little thicker.
Yeah.
Is always with Sam or Phil. Sam Morrell or Phil Hanley.
Okay, Sam works out of my gym.
Does he?
Yeah, I said hi to him the other day and I was just like...
He reports here. Do you want to hear something super embarrassing?
Mm-hmm.
So Mark got married, and I've met Mark like a dozen times. I used to go to his shows in Florida, like I was a big Norman fan. And
You were?
I mean, I am.
Okay, I was like, what happened?
Now we're like colleagues.
Yeah.
I said that to Tom Segura one time.
You said we're colleagues?
In 2013 or 14, when he was doing the Comedy Zone in Jax, this is before obviously he blew up. I was there with my ex-fiance, and she was doing a good picture with Tom. And I had met him twice before when he played the Zone, and we had communicated on Twitter. Because I was like, oh, I do comedy too. Yeah. So she was doing a picture, and I literally said, like, he was you, and I was here, and my ex-fiance is here. And I go, we do the same thing. We're pretty much colleagues. I don't want to get a picture. And I was like drunk as shit.
Did he hear you?
Oh, yeah.
What did he think about that?
Well, it's going to be weird when I get brought up on your mom's house next week.
Your mom's house?
Yeah, that's his podcast.
You're doing it?
No, Matt Fulshon, my co-host for the other podcast, is doing it to promote our new podcast.
Cool.
Yeah, but it's going to be... You don't forget something like that, especially because I've been following his career for decades. So it's like one of those things where it's like... People are like, oh, he doesn't even remember you. It's like, well, I'm pretty petty, so I remember everybody.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah. So
where is that gonna be recorded?
What? That
podcast.
We do it here.
With Tom?
No. Tom lives in Austin, so Matt's flying out to Austin to record it.
Okay.
I was like, do you need someone to come with you? She's like, I don't know how Tom feels about you.
That's hilarious.
Because he might not remember you at all, or he might fucking hate you. So no, you're not coming with me.
So what's this Mark story?
Oh, so Mark got married a couple months ago, and I was like, oh, I met him, like whenever I run into him, he always says that, hey, and just walks away. So I'm like, oh, he doesn't remember me. But I was like, oh, I should get him a gift for getting married. And we record in the same studio. Like, I'll show you their studio on the way out. So I got him this really expensive, really sick bottle of bourbon. And I was like, well, I can't get Mark something and not get Sam something, because I'm going to give it to him.
Right.
So then I bought Sam the Sopranos book, because he loves the Sopranos. And I put it in the studio. I see Mark like a week later, and I was like, hey man, did you get the bourbon? He was like, yeah. I just kind of walked away, and I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't just buy random gifts for strangers.
Yeah.
Because that seems very fanboy-y.
A little bit. But hey, you live and you learn. That's very sweet of you. I have a bit of a fan